Hey YouTube, this is Steve from Average Joe's Fantasy Football, and we've got your Week 9 waiver wire ads that you should consider grabbing this week to help you have some success going into Week 9. We are just over halfway through the fantasy season, so there are some, again, great matchups coming forward. We've got some players that might stand out and actually help you on this list that might save your season, so make sure you guys are staying tuned. So Week 9 of the NFL is just about here, which means we are talking players you should consider grabbing and adding to your roster to help you out with this week. Now, there are only two teams on a bye this week. You've got the 49ers and the Steelers. So not a huge amount, which is great news, but there were, of course, injuries that happened this past weekend and some players that obviously have really stood out and should be on your radar. Now, I'm going to jump into the quarterback position. I've got a couple players that I really want to mention in here. The first one is going to be Bo Nix. Going against the Ravens this week, he's available in 75% of leagues. Nix had his best fantasy performance on Sunday, scoring over 29 fantasy points. He finished with 284 passing yards and 4 total touchdowns. Now, of course, playing against the Panthers, it's always going to be a fantasy boost. Now plays against a Ravens team this week, but actually has played very poorly against quarterbacks. They just allowed Jameis Winston to have 3 touchdowns this past week. Nick should have a solid matchup going forward, and his schedule looks really good during the fantasy playoffs. So he is definitely a quarterback you should consider grabbing. Now, another quarterback I really like this week is going to be Matthew Stafford versus the Seahawks. He's available in 61% of leagues. Stafford has been forgotten since losing, obviously, Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp earlier this year. Both star receivers played Thursday night against a very tough Vikings defense, and Stafford played out amazing. Finished with 25 points, threw 4 touchdown passes as well, and now his schedule going forward is pretty tough, but as long as he has Cooper Kupp and Nacua there, and they are healthy, Stafford realistically has the ability to finish as a top 10 quarterback the rest of the season. So I really love that he got both of his guys back. Hopefully none of them get traded away. There's this kind of consideration, maybe Cooper Kupp gets moved on, but as long as both those receivers are there, Matthew Stafford is a solid grab. Another quarterback, Jameis Winston. Going against the Chargers this week, he's available in 94% of leagues. Winston showed the Browns why he should have realistically been the starter a lot earlier this season, even before Deshaun Watson got hurt and was gone for the season. He's not afraid to throw the ball down the field, and it definitely showed against the Ravens. He was also able to get a victory over the Ravens, which is huge. He threw for 334 yards and threw 3 passing touchdowns. He does have a little bit of a tougher matchup this week going against the Chargers, but in deeper leagues, I think Winston's definitely worth a grab and someone that you may want to consider putting on your roster. Now, jumping into the running back spot, Bucky Irving definitely needs more attention. He's going against the Chiefs this week, and he's available in 31% of leagues. Now, this is one time that I feel like obviously he should be on a roster, but Irving is not in a great matchup. So that is one thing I do have concern with. But he's been a big piece in this Buccaneers offense. And now, even more with both Godwin and Mike Evans out. Irving had 7 receptions last week and finished with 80 total yards. The matchup, like I said, in Week 9 is not perfect. It's probably one of the worst you could do against the Kansas City Chiefs because their schedule or their matchup is really tough. But he does have a great playoff schedule in fantasy, and he needs to be owned more often. So I'm really surprised he's still there, but I'm going to mention him every single time. Another running back I've mentioned before, I'm going to mention again, is going to be Alexander Mattison for the Raiders. He's going against the Bengals this week. He's available in 40% of leagues. Mattison has put up more points than I thought he would against the tough Chiefs defense, where he had some success, and a lot of it was in the receiving aspect. He had 5 receptions, and he was still given 15 touches on the ground as well. So clearly, this is putting Mattison as the clear running back 1 for the Las Vegas Raiders. And he definitely needs to be more rostered because of that ability. Now, he does have some really good matchups going forward, and I think realistically, Mattison could finish, I would say, a low-end running back 2, solid flex play rest of the season. I just think that he has the opportunity just because of the touches, and I think he's got a more favorable matchup. Now, Another running back I really want to mention as far as someone that you may want to consider grabbing is going to be Jonathon Brooks going against the Saints this week. He's available in 37% of leagues. Now, Brooks is expected to come off of IR, and there's a chance he could play the Saints this week. Now, I mentioned him now because when he does start to play for the Panthers, he could be a big piece. Depending on how the record is going to be for the Carolina Panthers, which most likely we all expect him to be pretty low, there's a chance that this is going to force the team to play a lot of their younger players just to kind of see what their future entails and kind of what this might look like. I know Hubbard's been pretty successful, and I know he's still there, and obviously Jonathon Brooks, obviously is probably going to get, I would say, slowly brought into the offense, but the opportunities might still be there for Jonathon Brooks, and I still think this is going to be an offense that, just based off of the fact that you've got an offense that needs to see what their players look like. They're young. They're not scoring a lot. They're not going to win a lot of games. I just think Brooks might be worth a grab here. Now, jumping into the wide receiver, I'm going to stick with the Browns aspect, and I've got Cedric Tillman versus the Chargers. He's available in 81% of leagues, and I mentioned Tillman as a waiver wire last week, and if you had listened and played him, you probably felt really great coming out of the Sunday games. Tillman has a great rapport right now with Jameis Winston, and it absolutely showed. Tillman scored twice and saw 9 targets his way. The previous game, he saw 12 targets as well. He's definitely become a big benefactor with Amari Cooper being traded away. I think he's been the biggest one out of that. I know a lot of people jumped on the Jerry Jeudy or maybe even Elijah Moore, and both had some targets and, decent. I think Elijah Moore was a little bit better than obviously what Jerry Jeudy put up. But again, with Amari Cooper gone, I think Tillman is probably the biggest benefit, and I think he should be rostered a lot more. And sticking with the wide receivers, another guy I like is going to be Calvin Ridley versus the Patriots this week. He's available in 31% of leagues. Now, again, I'm not going to tell you to just go out of your way, spend the highest on your waiver or fab just to get Ridley. But it's kind of convenient how as soon as Hopkins was traded away, Ridley had his best game of the season with 10 receptions and 143 receiving yards. On top of that, the schedule realistically for Ridley looks amazing. He's got one of the better schedules, especially in the fantasy playoffs and against defenses that really struggle against the pass. So I definitely want to at least let people know you should consider grabbing him. I'm not saying he's going to win you your league, but he might get you a couple games here or there. And sticking with the, a guy who I really like, but we'll see, it's more of a deeper league. It could be Xavier Legette versus the Saints this week. He's available in 85% of leagues. Now, in the deeper league aspect, I think he should be picked up. I'm not expecting him to be an outstanding stud week in and week out. I do think he's got a future there in Carolina. But there's a chance that Deontay Johnson gets traded. Adam Thielen is still hurt. And this really puts him as a potential wide receiver 1 for the Carolina Panthers. Like I mentioned about Jonathon Brooks, the Panthers could be in a position where they're obviously just not playing well. They need to kind of see what their young talent looks like and how they play against top-tier talent and, against other NFL teams and just kind of be evaluated. So I think he's definitely worth another, consideration of grabbing on waivers. Now, again, I'm talking deeper leagues maybe, or if you're in Dynasty, I'm sure he's already rostered. But if we're talking redraft, I would definitely talk about deeper leagues. And kind of deeper, go into that deeper league aspect. I really like John Metchie as another receiver you may want to consider grabbing. Now, he is playing against the Jets this week, and the Jets typically are a better defensive team, but they have obviously struggled this season. But Metchie's available in 100% of leagues. Metchie will be someone to consider grabbing only because Stephon Diggs obviously left the game with a knee injury, and right now nothing's been updated. He is out for week 9. It's already been kind of announced, but they're still evaluating and kind of figure out the severity of Diggs' knee. It did happen on a non-contact play, which is kind of a scary thing for any type of player. But I will say this, that leaves Dell as their primary target, and Metchie took advantage of, when Diggs went down. He did take a couple targets his way. He finished with 3 catches. I think realistically, I'm not amazed by it. I'm not like saying Metchie's going to be, getting a lot because Nico Collins is expected to be back in a couple weeks. But right now, if you're talking just a streamer, you're a deep league, you need something. I think Metchie is definitely worth grabbing because realistically, the Texans love to throw. I know they've really done a great job with Joe Mixon, and I still think Metchie's got some type of talent, even though he had dealt with, a kind of a rough start to his NFL career. And the last receiver I'm going to mention is going to be Gabe Davis for the chart. Your Jaguars going against the Eagles this week. He's available in 84% of leagues. Look, at the end of the day, Gabe Davis is the epitome of inconsistency. With that said, though, the Jags have lost their top 2 wide receivers in Kirk and Thomas Jr. Christian Kirk is out for the season due to a collarbone that's broken, and Brian Thomas Jr. is dealing with some rib issues and some other concerns. He's out at least 2 to 4 weeks. Putting Gabe Davis pretty much as their primary wide receiver, and he could definitely see a lot of targets his way. Understand, though, I'm not expecting Gabe Davis to fully replace Christian Kirk or fully replace, obviously Brian Thomas Jr., but matchup-wise, they're going against the Eagles. They're going to be forced to throw. Gabe Davis could end up being a nice little play this week, and we'll figure that out when we talk about the start and sits, but Gabe Davis should be, spend a little bit more fab money this week. Now, jumping into the tight end spot, I've got Cade Otton going against the Chiefs this week. He's available in 37% of leagues. Otton has been a big benefactor of Evans and Godwin due to their injuries. Now, of course, you hate to see a player get hurt and obviously players taking advantage of it, but at the same time, you're glad that you were able to take advantage of those top opportunities. Obviously, players like Cade Otton was starting to show up anyways this upcoming season with the Bucs offense, starting to trust him. I think Baker felt really good with him. And now Evans and Godwin out is definitely a big reason why Otton should be obviously rostered more. Otton had seen 20 targets in the last 2 games. He's coming off a 29-point performance from National Tight End Day, which was a crazy day. And now he's a juicy matchup against the Chiefs as well and should see plenty of targets his way. So if Cade Otton is available, he needs to be rostered right now. He should be probably one of your more priorities. Another tight end I like is Zach Ertz versus the Giants. He's available in 72% of leagues. Ertz has scored 14 points in each of the last 2 weeks and has definitely become a nice security blanket for Jaden Daniels. Ertz saw 11 targets this past Sunday, and for the season, he's averaging 5 targets a game. He's averaging 9.3 points a game. And right now, currently, Zach Ertz is tight end 9 for the season. So realistically, the fact that he's available in 72% of leagues, it's kind of blowing my mind right now because I think it's there. I get it. Some people are just holding on to tight ends because of their name. You got to start making some moves, and I think he's definitely someone you should consider grabbing. So that's my week 9 waiver wire video. Hopefully this helps you kind of out, figure out who you should put some money on, maybe put your priority on your waivers, whatever the case may be. Hit me up in the comments down below if you do have questions for waivers or who you should drop or pick up, or if you're doing some trades, hit me up, let me know. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. Make sure you are staying tuned. Obviously, we'll be dropping start and sits for this week. Hit that like button. I'll check you guys out next time.